okay with this?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, it doesn't matter to me. And oh gosh, what? I was looking at photos from last week, and it looked like the people who were at the lecture, if they wanted to, were not wearing masks. So whatever your comfort level is there. And over here on the left, that white jobber.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Good morning to everyone joining us on Altar. We are glad you are here with us today. May the humanity that is within every human being be held more and more precious and be regarded with ever-deepening reverence. Welcome to the Ethical Society of St. Louis. I'm Trish Cowan-Williams, the volunteer chair for Platform this week, and I've been a member of the society for 15 years, and my pronouns are she and her. Ethical humanist congregations provide the benefits of traditional religions, such as supportive and inspiring community, a commitment to shared values, and deeply meaningful engagement with people and ideas. But we do this without prayer or traditional ritual, respecting personal autonomy and freedom of thought. We are here to be human together. All are welcome to attend and participate. So that our program is not interrupted, please make sure your phones and other electronic devices are silenced. Usually we ask a young member of our community to read our core values of SEEK, our Sunday Ethical Education for Kids program. However, since we're all social distancing right now, I'll go ahead and read them. Every person is important and unique. Every person deserves to be treated fairly and kindly. I can learn from everyone. I am part of this earth. I cherish it and all the life upon it. I learn from the world around me by using my senses, mind, and feelings. I am a member of the world community, which depends on the cooperation of all people for peace and justice. I can learn from the past to build for the future. I am free to question. I am free to choose what I believe. I accept responsibility for my choices and actions, and I strive to live my values. This year, we are exploring these core values as our annual theme, and our theme this September is Every Person is Important and Unique. Our platforms include a wide variety of music to inspire us and to celebrate human diversity and creativity. Please welcome Mo Edgiston, a composer and musician. Mo is a composer and musician from right here in St. Louis, and I was lucky enough to be here for his sound check. He's amazing. He'll be performing 3 pieces this morning. Right now, he's going to start with one of his own compositions, Popcorn Blue. Right? What a beautiful way to start. Thank you so much, Mo. I wanted to let you all know that I told Mo that we weren't going to have a break between the pieces, but we are. We're going to have opening words this morning, and Dara Strickland will go ahead and give our opening words this morning.
Nobody told me I was going to have to follow up Mo. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dara Strickland. My pronouns are she, her, and it is good to be here with all of you today. As part of our platform, opening words has been important to me since before I even joined the Ethical Society. When I was still just a visitor, I was amazed that members sharing their personal joys and struggles with ethical life was an integral part of weekly meetings. For me, it was the first sign that the Ethical Society was a true community, not just a bunch of really nice people who like to get together to listen to lectures on Sundays. Early in my membership, I was asked to join the platform committee, which researches and coordinates our guest speakers for platforms, but also arranges for opening word speakers. So surely, right, I was an asset to the platform committee because of my network of diverse personal connections, or maybe because of my extensive knowledge of local history and culture. False. The truth is that I'm on the platform committee because even though I'm a loud person, particularly by ethical society standards, I'm also a very, very sneaky person. You see, here's the unvarnished truth about members who give opening words. During the year, we get a handful of wonderful volunteers, but the rest have to be ambushed like unsuspecting antelope in the coffee hour watering hole. Here is a hunter's eye view of the Becker room. Ha! She just took a bite of banana bread and her mouth is full. And him? He just turned away from conversation. He's refreshing his coffee. Strike. Hey, I was hoping you could help me out with opening words sometime. Ha. You see, that one sentence contains the 3 essential elements of bagging an opening words speaker. First, I was hoping. Hope is perhaps the most vital humanist value. If we didn't think the world could be better, or failing even that we could be better in the world, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And we definitely wouldn't be watching and waiting to come back. Second, right? After humanists are hopeful people, second we have, you could help me. There's not enough room in any platform to enumerate all the ways in which our members help each other and seek to help other people. That's what puts the deed before the creed. Humanists are helpful people. But, right, the most vital part of the entire thing is the element of surprise. Because as a congregation, even though we have millennia of ethical life experience in this room, right, think about it. If there are 20 people here right now over the age of 50, and I'm looking at you, and I know it's true, that's over 1,000 years of experience right there. Over 1,000 years of lessons that we could learn from each other, even in little 3 to 5 minute increments once a week. But that element of surprise is necessary because even though that wisdom is so great and so appreciated, humanists kind of hate talking about themselves, especially in, public. So, I'm going to level with you. Over the last year and a half, the mighty hunters of opening word speakers have had slim pickings without access to our coffee hour habitat. Sending emails, making social media posts, bugging our friends, right? It doesn't really have any surprise factor. We have bribed. We have called in favors. In one very, very, constantly reoccurring case, we have threatened military history lectures in lieu of opening words. And now, right, we're back in person, but we have to stay 6 feet apart. How are we supposed to surprise people now? Like everyone else, we have to balance the vulnerability that makes us a community with the distance that keeps us safe. So here's my solution. It's a pole. Right, more specifically, it is a 4-foot pole, which combined with my arm gives me a 6-foot reach. With this, I should be able to get a sufficient surprise factor at coffee hour. It's not a subtle plan. Or you could come forward, like our wonderful opening words volunteers have, the ones who saw us through our time apart. We've just had a very long season of reflection, and you all have some piece of wisdom, some verse of poetry, some lima bean recipe that your hopeful, helpful community is hungry to hear. So, volunteer for the role or expect the poll.
Thank you, Dara. That was very intimidating. And Mo will now perform our second musical selection, Ordinary People by John Legend. Thank you so much, Mo. We encourage members to send suggestions for music and musicians to our music director, J.D. Brooks, and his email address is jdbrooks@ethicalstl.org. Before our main address, we like to take a moment to calm our minds and bodies. And that music was the perfect segue for it, wasn't it? I invite you to sit comfortably, relax, and enjoy 1 minute of mindful breathing. It is my pleasure to now introduce Charli Cooksey, founder and CEO at We Power. Charli developed a passion for political change and grassroots movement building early on in her journey. And in 2015, Charli successfully ran for the St. Louis Public Schools Board of Education, working to realize educational equity through policy change. In 2017, Charli served as the interim executive director, lead catalyst of Forward Through Ferguson, and then founded We Power. We Power has secured over $10 million in public funding for early childhood education, helped businesses increase their revenue 3.5 times, and grown a coalition of residents and community-based organizations committed to economically just policies, such as community benefits agreements. Charli's presentation today is called The Pain of Progress. Please welcome Charli Cooksey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charli Cooksey, and my pronouns are she, her. It is an honor to be with you this morning. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in community, particularly as we navigate this pandemic still. Today, I want to reflect upon the work of movement building and social change, but do so grounded in the theme that I've decided to call the pain of progress. Have you ever been hurt? And if so, feel free to raise your hand. In the moment, you didn't quite know if you would or if you could move forward or through that pain. I've had a few of those moments. In fact, one of those moments is right now. I'm in it. I'm an only child. I come from a small family, so growing up and still now, my cousins are my siblings, at least the closest thing to it. At the beginning of this January, my beautiful big cousin, my only first girl cousin, was diagnosed with cancer that was metastasizing through her body. It had traveled from her lungs to her liver. Michelle had the skin of a baby and the face of a teenager, so I easily and often forgot her age. She turned 50 a few days after the diagnosis. The last time I saw her, she was full of joy and jokes, her usual self. This time, she had lost so much weight that I barely recognized her. It turned out she hadn't been to the doctor in nearly 30 years and also hadn't had health insurance all that time. I remember when she came home after getting her tube installed for chemo, right in her chest. I stayed up all night on the couch to make sure she didn't accidentally roll over on the tube and sleep on it. That was a big no-no. When I am deliriously tired, I have the wildest hallucinations. This was one of those nights. I thought that I was there to comfort her, and instead she comforted me. In her weakest moments, in the middle of that night, she told me she would take care of me if I needed anything and whispered a joke to calm me back down. A week or so later, her brother and I thought we were taking her to a doctor's appointment, but on the way, she suddenly couldn't breathe. She was grasping so aggressively for air that we didn't know if those intense gasps would be her last or not. I drove as my other cousin, her brother, and I debated whether to take her to the nearest ER or not, recognizing that the hospital where she had her health care covered throughout this journey was over 30 minutes away from our home. I wondered what would be different if she had access to health care all this time for these past 30 years. Nonetheless, that trip to the doctor turned into a trip to the ER, and Michelle never returned home after it was shared that the cancer had spread to her brain and other parts of her body. We had the most beautiful balloon ceremony for her. Over 100 folks showed up to the park across the street from our childhood church. Fully masked, hearts full of love and carrying Michelle's spirit inside of each of us, it was the most magical and communal experience I've ever had. The family, including me, felt a super sense of peace and closure. As I tried to support my family throughout the 2 months of Michelle battling such aggressive cancer, I never paused to check in on myself, to take care of Charli. I was still working, zipping and running at WePower in between my cousin's battles with cancer. The week after Michelle's homegoing, grief suddenly and unexpectedly consumed me. It crept into my meetings and conversations. Thank goodness for Zoom. I could abruptly turn off my camera to let a few tears shed and to process the flashbacks I had of those moments when my cousin was at her worst. My heart was heavy in the weeks that followed. The flashbacks were vivid and they were constant, but there was more grief to come. There was a heaviness in my stomach. I felt more loss on the way, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I sat on my front porch one day, soaking up the sun, looking into the sky, trying to make sense of the sickness in my stomach. I felt something coming. I felt the pain of it before it even arrived. My next-door neighbor, who was so much more than a neighbor, pulled up and headed into the house. She was a founding member of the WePower community. She had completed 2 of WePower's inaugural community leadership programs. She then became one of WePower's earliest team members, or formerly folks call it employees. But most importantly, she was my neighbor. Her family and my family celebrated every holiday together. Her children's pictures decorated my family's walls inside our home, and still do. We ate barbecue together. We called each other to solve unexpected dramas and challenges as they arose. My family took her daughter to the bus stop to school for 1 year. We were in many ways like family. That week following my cousin's death, my neighbor abruptly resigned from her role at WePower. I was shocked, but I was going to support my neighbor. First, by planning a going-away celebration with the team, with the WePower community, and with our closest partners. We had finally settled on a date and time for that celebration through a series of texts we exchanged one night the week after she resigned. The next morning, my neighbor published a blog that falsely implicated WePower, the organization I had founded, the organization my neighbor helped build, falsely implicating that we were conspiring with one of our many funders to burn down this city's largest public school district. The blog went viral. It permeated the hearts and minds of folks who were looking for a tangible artifact to help them villainize WePower. For others, it led to confusion. Pain crept inside of all of us, inside of all of our hearts and minds. How was I to return home tonight after my neighbor created such an uproar? How do I smile and wave and chat? How do I make sense of this all? How do I reassure our growing community at WePower that their work as impacted people was real? That what they experienced when they democratically developed policies and advocacy strategies was not a lie, but it truly was authentic moments of community and movement building. How do I navigate this moment? A moment that quickly spread across Missouri and even beyond. Still, to this day, Our team spends much of our time responding to inquiries and complaints about us trying to privatize and destroy public schools when there's zero evidence that any of this is true. Still, I receive texts, calls, tweets, screenshots of my next-door neighbor and her new advocacy family slandering We Power, the organization that I thought and I know and still believe is a manifestation of my deep commitment to create a space where Black and Latinx folks can be in community, where they can be in community in a space where they have the power to dream, to imagine a future that values their full humanity, and where they are affirmed, and to be able to bring those dreams to life. There's a pain I have inside of me right now, at this very moment. My heart is heavy. It's been beating faster than ever lately. Tears fall more than I care to admit. There's a heat inside of me that I've never felt before, especially not this consistently. I didn't realize there would be such hatred, such anger for We Power's demand for a public education system to better improve and transform its conditions to value the humanity of all of our children. This isn't the kind of hurt that comes and goes quickly. It's pervasive. It's been aggressively attacking my spirit, attacking my usually blind hope and the potential of progress. But I am here. I am making sense of this pain. I have realized that the pain inside of me is the fire our movement needs. I'm going to make sure that this pain gets put to good use. The pain inside all of us is the fire our movement towards social and racial justice needs. We all have moments of great loss, of pain, of hurt, of trauma beyond comprehension. What if we embrace these moments as sparks, as a fire we need to uproot injustice, as a fire we must grow inside and beyond ourselves? I'm going to share an excerpt from something I recently read. Fire heals nature, but when we experience catastrophic wildfires in our communities, we are inclined to fear fire's destruction. It is understandable. We are accustomed to thinking of fire only in terms of loss, and when our lives, property, and possessions are at risk, fire can be a threat to take very seriously. It is fire, though, that helps redwoods, a kind of tree, proliferate. Fire is a key factor in their germination, regeneration, and survival. Fire enriches soils with nutrients for falling redwood seeds to thrive in, and it can also unlock seed banks in the base of redwoods. Both strategies ensure new generations of redwoods can thrive. In nature, fire has a very different role. A burned-over landscape may feel like loss to us, but it becomes an ecosystem brimming with life. What if fire can be for us what fire has been for nature? Can you all repeat after me? The fire inside must become the power of we. The fire inside must become the power of we. Thank you. It was the pain, the fire inside during the open casket ceremony of Emmett Till and the pictures that followed that became the seeds of the power that fueled and sparked the civil rights movement. It was the pain, the fire, inside of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, two trans liberation activists that sparked the movement for the LGBTQ+ rights efforts. It was the pain, the fire, inside the protesters in Ferguson after the murder of Michael Brown Jr. that grew the global movement for Black lives. We all have the fire inside of us. We must own it. We must activate it. We must use it to build power. I pose this question to each of you. Where is your fire? It is the fire that births and sustains movements. Where is your fire? Can you repeat after me? Our pain is the fire that nourishes the movement. No power, no progress. More power, more progress. So what is power? I keep talking about it. So for We Power, we define power simply as the ability to act, to be able to self-determine one's future. And we believe that power comes from three sources: organized people, organized money, and folks in positions of status. So one example of power and how power has been used to spark a movement and to lead to social change, maybe not social change I believe in, is the NRA, the National Rifle Association. And so through their ability to activate these three sources of power, they have organized 5 million members across the country. They have organized $128 million per year, and they have been able to influence over 300 federal elections, including $30 million towards the 2016 Trump campaign. Imagine if we organize all these sources of power. Imagine if we organize and allowed ourselves to use the fuel and the pain inside of us towards a movement that valued all of our humanity. We really could and will change the world. And so at We Power, we are building power towards reimagined systems of equity and justice. And for us, it's not just good enough to change a policy or to change a resource flow. We have to change hearts and mindsets. And so for us, we think about 6 components of systems change. We think about mental models, so how do we change what we think and believe about ourselves, about our relationship to systems that are currently harming way too many Black and brown folks. We're thinking about how we build enough power together to shift relationships and connections, to shift power dynamics, to shift also policies, practices, and resource flows. But we know that it's not good enough to just start at the surface, but we have to start at the root, our hearts and our mindsets. So at We Power, our mission is to activate community power to redesign education, economic, health, and justice systems to be just and equitable for all. We have a 10-year vision, and it just kicked off this year. And our 10-year vision includes a St. Louis region where powerful Black and Latinx communities are leading a movement to create education and economic systems that nurture our lives rather than destroys them. And so with that, we want to be able to measure it. We don't just want it to be a feeling. So we want to see an increase in the number of families that have access to a transformational early childhood and K-12 public education system. We also want to be able to measure it by seeing more children on track to have more wealth than their parents. And so we have 4 strategies that get us there. We built powerful relationships with everyday people by knocking on doors, phone banking, grabbing now virtual tea and coffee, and just simply listening to residents, understanding those moments that have been moments of pain for them and hearing about ways that they can activate that pain into power and then ultimately transform that power into progress. We also activate a movement of new leaders of all kinds, grassroots organizers, public leaders, and system designers, because we know we need an ecosystem of leaders of all kinds to create the change that our region so desperately and urgently needs. Thirdly, we accelerate community-owned wealth generation. So that happens through working with businesses that are owned by Black and Latinx folks. We run a business accelerator. We provide a zero-interest loan program and also an investment fund to shift the economic conditions in the neighborhoods that we are doing work with those residents to change outcomes and shift systems. And lastly, we tell human-centered stories that shift beliefs and behaviors, because we know that it's time to shift the narrative about what we think and believe about ourselves, about Black and brown folks, and about the systems. Go back to a picture. So at the end of it, we believe that power is a human right. And also, we believe that transformational progress is so much more important than incremental progress. And through these 6 conditions for systems change, shifting mental model, shifting relationships and connections, shifting power dynamics, policies, procedures, and resource flows, we can achieve transformational progress over incremental progress. There's no such thing as reforming or improving white supremacy. Liberation requires systems, education, carceral, health, and economic ones rooted in racism to be reimagined and rebuilt from the ground up, led by historically oppressed communities. Liberation starts with the fire inside of each of us. Movement leader Cesar Chavez once said, "The people united will never be defeated." It is the fire inside of each of us that will unite us, and united, we are powerful. I want to end with some excerpts from one of my favorite poems of all time by Sonia Sanchez. Where is your fire? I say, where is your fire? You've got to find it and pass it on. You got to find it and pass it on. From you to me, from me to her, from her to him to the son, to the father, from the brother to the sister, from the daughter to the mother, from the mother to the child. Where is your fire? I say, where is your fire? Can't you smell it coming out of our past? The fire of living, not dying. The fire of loving, not killing. The fire of blackness, not gangster shadows. Where is our beautiful fire that gave light to the world? The fire of pyramids, the fire that burned through the holes of slave ships and made us breathe. The fire that made guts into chitterlings. The fire that took rhythms and made jazz. The fire of sit-ins and marches that made us jump boundaries and barriers. The fire that took street talk sounds and made them righteous Imhotep raps. Where is your fire? The torch of life, full of Nzinga and Nat Turner and Garvey and Du Bois and Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin and Malcolm and Mandela. Catch your fire, don't kill. Hold your fire, don't kill. Learn your fire, don't kill. Be the fire, don't kill. Catch the fire and live. Live, 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 live. Our children, black and brown folks, poor folks, LGBTQ plus folks, folks with disabilities, all across St. Louis need us to catch the fire, need us to honor their fire, their pain, their urgent call for freedom. Let's harness the fire within and activate the power of we. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your fire with us, Charli. We are not passing collection baskets right now, but if you're moved to make a donation today, you can do so at ethicalstl.org/donate. But don't feel you have to. We recognize that this is a financially difficult time for a lot of folks. I missed that there was a little announcement earlier from Seek, and I wanted to share that this week our seekers of all ages are working together to build their classroom culture and establish the values that bind their teams. By becoming invested in their teams, our seekers will develop a sense of pride and ownership in the program and encourage buy-in in regards to their own classes and into our congregation as a whole. And now we'll have our final musical selection, performed by Mo, Take Me Higher by Fertile Ground. being here today, for each other and yourselves. After this meeting, there is a discussion of the platform address right here in this room, so feel free to stick around and ask questions and discuss with friends. If you are joining us on Alter, we invite you to submit questions via the chat, and we'll read them up here. If you would prefer some social time, please join us downstairs for coffee and a chance to gather with friends. We have a shaded space on the patio, so everyone can spread out a little bit more. Don't forget to come to Dara before she finds you, right? Don't get the pole. If you're a new visitor today, you can use a yellow mug and then you can avoid the pole, so that's a good solution there. But if you use a yellow mug, then we'll know that you're a visitor and we'll come find you and greet you. To end our program, I invite you to wave to those close to you, and I wish you a wonderful week.
So folks, we have never before done the question and answer session like this in this room. But this is a new innovation that we're trying out for a number of reasons. But one of the good main ones is that it means that the people at home can still participate if we do it in this room. So if you'd like to stay to ask a few questions of Charli, then I invite you to take a seat, and I'll take the questions from people in the hall, and we'll also take them from people who are joining us online. If you don't want to participate in the Q&A, now is a good time to go downstairs, or at least take your conversation out of this room so that we can hear you. Okay, so I have a question from Bev. Do you want to come? Let's just use this mic right now. There's a lot of technology going on that we're learning. So I have a question from Bev online. And the first question is, what do you think of the soon-to-be opening Homer G. Phillips Hospital? I don't know why they're asking you this question, but do you have an opinion on it?
Hi, Beth. Well, I haven't had a lot of time to process, but I guess for context, the Homer G. Phillips, the history and legacy of Homer G. Phillips is tied to racial segregation in this region in our city. And so for many decades, if not generations, black folks could only get medical treatment at the original Homer G. Phillips Hospital, and that's where they trained all the black doctors and nurses, and so it holds lots of history, and was located in North St. Louis City. So now, from my understanding, NGA is being built. They broke ground recently, and that's the National Geospatial Headquarters. I forgot what the A is for. And there is a developer who identifies as a white man who has bought up lots of land in North St. Louis City, pretty much hoarded it, and has made it hard for other folks like me. I'm trying to buy a new house over there right now. It's been hard for other folks to buy and rehab properties in North St. Louis because this developer has been sitting on this land for so many years, and has finally started to break ground on building his own properties in North St. Louis, and has decided to name the hospital, his hospital that he's developing, Homer G. Phillips. And so I guess with that context, I'm disappointed that was a choice that was made without consulting and engaging community. And I recognize the legacy and the resiliency of folks who had no choice but to go through a medical system that was rooted in racism and segregation. And I think that there's been a negligence to acknowledge that history, to understand both the joy and also trauma that comes with naming a hospital after Homer G. Phillips. And I think that it wasn't thoughtfully done, and given the relationship this developer has with North St. Louis City and the Black community, it's super concerning that the hospital has been named after him without any thoughtful engagement of the community and consultation on whether they think that was the right decision.
Great. You had a very informed opinion.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Does anyone here in the room have a question? I do have another one online, but yeah, okay, go ahead. So I gave very poor instructions, because what I didn't explain is that no one at home can hear you while you are speaking to us like this. So I have to repeat the question, and then if you have a long statement, they won't hear it. They'll just have silent. No, it's great. So I didn't give good instructions. This is the first time we're doing it like this. But the question for the people joining us online is essentially, can you please talk a little bit more, Charli, about your experience working with high school students? So let's do that.
And what's your name? Norm. Well, I don't know if the folks on the live stream heard it, but thank you, Norm, for just doing such an eloquent and concise analysis of why we have titled the organization We Power. It's exactly what Norm said, that we believe in the inherent power within everyone, and that it is a matter of activating it. And we are very strategic about not using the word empower, because what Norm said, it implies that someone with power is the only one who can give power to someone else. And so thank you for being able to catch on to that and so brilliantly articulating it. When I came back from St. Louis after completing my undergraduate studies, I joined a program called Teach for America, and I naively thought I could change the world one kid at a time, and was rudely awakened that that's not how change works. And also realized that the most important job to me in this world is being an educator, and realized how hard it was, but how much it deserves more compensation, benefits, value, acknowledgement, and everything you can think of. But while in the classroom, I had a really cool opportunity to loop with my students, so travel with them from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, which is very rare, which essentially meant that I would be with them their 3 years before high school. And so that shifted how I saw my role. I saw my role as not just being an educator, but being a partner and them figuring out their trajectory post middle school. And so I started to look at the data, and I quickly realized that the numbers were staggering and counter to what my students and their families had planned for them. And so I didn't meet a single family who didn't have aspirations of their children attending college and completing college. And unfortunately, the data at the time, which was like 2010, 2011, if you imagine a classroom of 25 students, only 5 or less were projected to go on to college and complete college. And so that led me and 3 other teachers to start an organization called Inspire STL. So we supported middle school students, we called them scholars, through college completion. And so we ran a prep program, a very intensive one. They were with us for 8 weeks throughout the summer, 8 hours a day. They had hours of homework after the summer program or each evening, and they had access to high school level prep classes during middle school. And then we also helped them get placed into top performing college prep high schools, some public, some private, and then we supported them throughout their high school journey and college completion. And so that work has kept me incredibly grounded, and that remains my family. It's hundreds and hundreds of scholars we supported, and so whenever I'm wondering about my why or if I need to keep going or not, it's those scholars who I believe hold me accountable for why we have to shift our system, our education system in particular, to better support them. And what I realized through that work was that we were doing incredibly powerful work. We consistently had 100% of our scholars graduate from high school and go into college and accrue millions of dollars in scholarships. And we even have some of our first classes graduating. We have scholars who graduated from Stanford, from WashU, from some of our best historically black colleges who are engineers, and some in med school. I mean, it's really cool. But what I realized is that there aren't just a few hundred scholars who need access to a transformative education. Thousands, every young person in this region, in the city alone, there's 30,000 children. And so in order for us to address these inequities, we really have to think about shifting systems. And yes, programs and direct service are important, but until we start to collectively shift systems, we'll only be at a place where we can support a few scholars here and a few young people here. And so that's what led me to really think about the role of We Power to shift systems while others do the important work of running programs.
It's so cool that you're a TFA alum. I did the equivalent program in the UK, which was started by the same people. It's called Teach First. So, and I too naively thought you could change the world by becoming a high school teacher through a program like that, and had a rude awakening of my own. Sharon has a question from Alta. Hey, Sharon. She says, "You've ignited our fire. How can we help We Power?" So what can our members do for you?
Thank you. I think I deleted that slide. Let me see.
They might not be able to see the slides at home
Oh,
right now.
right, okay.
I'm not sitting at the desk anymore, so I
Okay.
can't change the...
Well, can I send a follow-up email with links on how to get engaged? Because I can tell you, but you won't have access to the things to do it. But there's a few things we're doing right now. One of the things we're doing is we're actually recruiting a cohort of Black and Latinx women who want to pursue public leadership. And so if you know any phenomenal, fierce, unbossed Black or Latinx woman, we would love for you to nominate her. The application closes in early October. Additionally, we are trying to grow our community of early childhood education advocates. There's unfortunately about $1 billion gap in public funding for early childhood in the St. Louis region for children birth through 5. And so we're working really hard to close that gap by having a movement of early child education advocates demand the resources that our children deserve. We need more resources coming from the state level. We need more resources coming from the local level. And through that movement building, through advocacy, through us having monthly strategy meetings, calling on our elected leaders and government institutions, we believe that we can increase the public funding needed. And then lastly, we are working really hard to try and build enough momentum for there to be a citywide planning process to reimagine K-12 public education in St. Louis City. And so anyone who believes that we need to address root causes, that we need to address the fact that there are so many schools closing in areas like North St. Louis City, we would love for you to get involved that way and sign on support saying that a citywide planning process needs to happen. So those are just a few ways. And then if you're into business and entrepreneurship, we're always looking for mentors and guest experts and also investors.
We will include those links that you send in our weekly blast that we send out to everybody who's on our email list. Okay, there's a couple of questions in the hall. Yes?
I'm Larry. Could you tell us your vision for what a successful public education system in St. Louis would look like? What's California at the end of the journey from here to California?
So Larry asks, what is your vision, Charlie, for a successful public education system? What would it look like?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Larry. This probably sounds like a cop-out, but one of my favorite TV shows that got discontinued, there's a scene, and there's like a indigenous African woman leader who's teaching someone to fight. But anyway, in this clip, she shouts out, like, we don't know what freedom looks like, but we know that we have to pursue it. And so for me, I honestly don't have a detailed answer of what a transformational education system looks like, but I do believe through collective imagination, through collective problem solving, through literally sitting in rooms with other folks who have been impacted by the system, that we can come up with the right solutions together. I have very specific things that excite me, and I think that they will be able to evolve and take better shape through collective conversations with other people. But some of those things are reimagining how we fund public schools. So right now they're funded through property taxes. Imagine if we had another revenue stream to better resource schools and it wasn't tied to where you live, so that inevitably, for example, a Clayton or Ladue school district will get more resources than the city school district because there's more resources in Clayton. So that's one thing. But also reforming the funding formula at the state level too, because so much of the dollars come from the state level as well. I would say the other piece is that we have a great education institution in every neighborhood, that every child is able to walk outside and just a few blocks away they can access the educational institution that they deserve, and that we look at schools as community hubs versus looking at it just being the place for the student or the young person to go to from 9 to 3. And I think that if we really created neighborhoods where schools were at the center and they were the anchor institution, it would make it a lot easier for adults to center our children in our everyday lives and decisions. So those are just a few thoughts.
I don't have any questions online, so do we have another question? Okay, Bradley, you're going to take the last question, and then we'll shut this down. This has been a great test of our new question and answer way of doing things, so thank you.
Cooksey, can you talk a little bit about how your WePower movement has spread nationwide?
Okay, so the question is, how has the WePower movement spread nationwide? Can you talk about that?
Thank you for that question, Bradley. Well, I'm not fortunate enough to say it's spread nationwide quite yet, but I'm speaking into existence. But I will say that there are a lot of other regions and people doing really amazing work, and so we've been doing a lot of learning. So much of what we've been doing has been meeting with folks who are getting things right. And so when we think about our wealth building work, we are interviewing folks from across the country, even sometimes doing learning trips pre-pandemic to understand what are the conditions that you all put in place to lead to community wealth, to lead to entrepreneurs thriving. For our early child education work, before we got clear on our policy platform, we took a learning trip to Detroit, we took a learning trip to Tulsa, and we met with any and everyone we could for a few days and interviewed them, learned their stories, learned their platform, and understood what challenges they navigate and successes they navigated. So I think that right now we're in the we're building an ecosystem of folks we can learn and grow with, and hopefully through that learning we can prove that we power is a concept that should be normalized across the country, and then that way it becomes something that's in every community that is not serving Black and brown folks the way it should be served. They should be served.
Thank you, everyone. Would you like to offer your appreciation one more time, both for your presentation and for your questions? Thank you, everyone on Altar. I forget which camera I set up, so I'm going to look at both of them. Thank you for joining us online. Hopefully you had a much better, smoother experience this week than last week, and next week it's going to be even better than this week, because we just keep learning and growing every week, don't we? So thank you for joining us, everyone. Please go and get some coffee and hang out with some friends. And thank you so much for that. That was great. You really rolled with some difficult challenges we threw at you at the last minute.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Nice to meet you.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to stop the stream
Okay.
now, so excuse me.